Sure. Well, the thing is that it comes in because ethnic studies starts off, we all think that this is understanding other people's cultures. We think that this is learning how Japanese people might walk into a room and remove their shoes, or the foods that they eat, and beautiful things that are about uniting us. And what you really find in ethnic studies is that it's Paulo Freire's version of teaching people what's called the double helix. And when I say people, I'm talking about children. So we're teaching children this double helix of both centering around the marginalized. So teaching kids who don't think this way, because this is 2023. And most children, if they're not taught to think a certain way, feel like they can accomplish anything. This is not the 1960s. So that's how kids start to think. And then we're going to bring them into school and show them, no, actually, that because you are this race or this gender or whatever, that we're going to put these things on you that don't need to be on you. We're going to put a lens of oppression on you. That's part one. But part two is to bring in social justice. So then these kids are being told what justice is. And as somebody who lived in Seattle and saw what justice was, as somebody who was jumped for holding a sign that says character matters, that is my story by somebody who looks just like me. So when we say that, oh, we're looking out for the marginalized, first, I don't like the idea of teaching children that they're victims of any kind. And I come from the highest level of victim, marginalized, whatever. On the ACEs scale, I'm a 9. So that means there's very few things of childhood trauma that I've not experienced. In fact, the only thing is no one's been killed in front of me. So that would put me in the center of the room. But as a child who's come through those things, when I would go to school, I would want that to be my escape. Instead, it becomes let's only think about this. So another huge problem with ethnic studies is it's taking away time where we can be teaching children about education, where we can be lifting their academics and improving their outcomes. And instead, we are keeping them in this sense of constant misery that I find cruel and sadistic. Sure. I was speaking at an ethnic studies commission meeting, and one of the members of the teachers union had said that they want ethnic studies as enmeshed into school as cinnamon is into cinnamon bread. So that does not mean that a person can say, I don't want my child to learn this way. It means that it is in every single subject. Math is no longer 2 + 2 = 4, but math is now, there are 4 Black kids in the room, and these Black kids have experienced these hardships. And so how is the amount of money that they're going to make? It's a constant. It is a constant kind of, I know that there are people who balk at the term brainwashing, but even if you take brainwashing off the table, you are teaching people to be miserable and to live in a sense of constant misery. Again, I find that extremely abusive to do to any single child. A child comes into a room having so much potential and feeling like they can they can do anything. So you walk into a classroom, this 2 kindergartners, and the teacher says, what do you want to be when you grow up, Johnny? And Johnny, who is blonde and blue-eyed, says, I want to be a doctor. And the teacher says, wonderful. And then she looks at LaQuisha and says, and what do you want to be? And LaQuisha says, I want to be a Supreme Court justice. And they say, oh, well, honey, that's going to be harder for you. And that's what systemic racism really is. So we are constantly hearing we want to defeat systemic racism. But what I find to be a really true statement is that the people who created the problem, which the people who've been in charge of education for all of these years, have looked down at minorities for all of these years, and we see the outcomes. We see 16% proficiency rate in our schools. Meanwhile, if we turned around and we said every single child has the potential, and we built these children up to believe in their own personal potential, they would have better outcomes. Critical race theory is, how it's blown off is that it's considered to be this college level class, this college level course, where you are looking at why things are unjust in the world. It's a heavy class for college age people. bringing it onto what it means when we bring it into children. And it's really critical theory. I wouldn't call it critical race theory. That's only one part of it. But it is teaching them all of the ways in the world in which they're oppressed. That's so cruel to do to kids. It's even if it's true. Well, one, we're putting kids into collectives. So we're assuming that just because a kid fits into this category, they're not oppressed, that they don't have families that are, defunct at home. And we are doing them all the disservice, but we're also creating kids who are depressed, kids who are suicidal, and kids who will do anything to be part of it. If I can be really candid, I've done a lot of speaking with people who have escaped communism, and everything that we're doing right now, all of these things that we're doing are exactly the guidebook, rule by rule. So when we hear about, or we accuse people of being fascist and being Hitler-like and whatever else, and we don't realize that we're basically sending our kids to become the next youth cultural revolution, we're ignoring something that is deeply troubling. Ethnic studies, like I said before, is about bringing in social justice. Critical race theory is Paulo Freire, and it is absolutely bringing their version of social justice. And again, BLM, and I'll say it because I am Black, so BLM's version of justice and my version as somebody who loves my country and loves the view of liberty and doesn't really want to focus on a communistic, because that's what it is, a communistic outcome for all people, I don't see justice as the same thing. So when we immerse critical race theory or ethnic studies, because literally Christine Sleater, who created or who is a big voice behind ethnic studies, she literally says that flavor of the month or cultures of the month are the wrong direction to take our children in. Instead, ethnic studies in K through 12 education must be guided by critical race theory. I have never seen in my 40 plus years of life, I've never seen a more racist time than what we're living in now. I know that as an educator, when I sub in schools, I'm always wondering what people think about me. What labels have they put on me before I even walk into the classroom? When I'm walking down the hall, teachers definitely look at me like, can we say anything to her? People call me a breath of fresh air, which in some ways is wonderful and in other ways is just heavy, because I don't want to always have to be on. And that's from an adult standpoint. Putting that on our children, there are kids who don't want to sit on the bus next to Whitey now, and that's accepted. We also have protected classes. And so it'll go down a list of all of these things that are protected, but who's not protected? The white male child is not protected. So you'll look at me and you'll go, well, why do you care? Well, maybe because I have a child who passes as a white male. So it is personal to me. And that's the thing, is that we've gotten to this point where somebody who looks like me can have somebody in my own family who looks different. And yet I'm supposed to be okay with them being oppressed because that somehow benefits me. And I think that creating this culture where people are only looking out for themselves, if you want to know where critical race theory takes us, if you want to know where ethnic studies takes us, you only need to look at what's happened in the Black community for the last 30 years. You have to look at their, not all of them, but as a culture, that dependency, that even entitlement. And that's what we're putting on all of our children. And it's, for me, I'm very passionate about what's going on in the Black community because it's unfair what's happened to them. But again, the people who claim they want to fix it by taking all of the actions that they've applied in the Black community and putting them on all of our students, by turning them into, if they're not already an ethnic minority, by turning them into a gender minority, but definitely giving them the sense that they are victims and that there's wheels of oppression and that they are stuck. And so they must dismantle the system. Sure, dismantling the system is anything, any societal norm, husband and wife, mental health, anything that we think. One example, I play Harriet Tubman. And so I was doing Harriet Tubman, and people would come up to me at this festival and they would say, I didn't know that Harriet Tubman believed in God, because the new children's books have removed God, dismantling, removing the system, the societal norm of faith. And they've removed it and said that Harriet just had seizures. But that is being, for people who want to be so authentic, that's not who Harriet was. Harriet very adamantly loved the Old Testament stories, and she felt that God directed her paths. She's even, and I know that this offends people, there are people who will say, well, Harriet, because she openly says she didn't love the New Testament because the New Testament had slaves obey your master. But that's truth. And we can't be afraid of truth. And we are teaching our children to be fragile, all children to be fragile. And I think that that's my biggest issue with all of this stuff, is that we aren't teaching kids to be truly resilient, even though they'll claim those words. Instead, we are breaking children. I think the real solution is to focus on the individual. Everything that we're doing right now is focusing on the collective. And when you are a collective, you fall to things like, this is our democracy. We fall to mob rule. We fall to being obedient to what we are told to do. And we really give up our liberty. And I think that liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, probably the biggest thing of all of these things that are coming towards us, is that they want to destroy faith. They want faith removed and replaced with a dependency on the state. Ultimately, when everything comes down, that's the ultimate goal, is a dependency on the state, which means that our people cannot have faith. And as somebody who escaped from the foster system, who walked myself out when I was 8 years old, as someone who has experienced really, really terrible things, the thing that has always gotten me through was that I had hope and I have faith. And I believe that with those two things, there's nothing that I can't overcome. And they want to take that from every single child. And what they'll say is, oh, no, we don't. We're just bringing in a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But people who are of faith and are grounded in their own faith don't want a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that's not being intolerant, because true intolerance is treating people poorly who don't agree with you. And I do not advocate for that. But to take away faith, to restore faith, I think is one of the biggest things that we can do. And also just to not teach fear. I'm so tired of that constant, we'll keep you safe narrative. So all of these people are afraid to reach out, to get to know other people because, well, what if I offend them? What if I commit some sort of a microaggression? And then we stop seeing people as human beings. When we start seeing each other as individuals and valuing them for their own worth, and teaching histories also that are unifying, but that are still true, but that have a unifying message. Because when we pretend that school is not political or that school is neutral, we're wrong. School is not neutral. So we have to teach with intention the things we want our children to know. And so if we want our children to live in this kind of Star Trek world where we look at everything and color, that one famous episode where color and size and shape have no impact on how we view a person, but we're looking at them soul to soul, I believe that's how we heal. I think that if you want to know what the solutions are right now, our solutions are not in our schools. Our solutions are not in these institutions that have already done so much damage and now are willingly doing the damage to sell, S-E-L, our children. Instead, we must, as parents, come back and be responsible. We cannot just be guided onto our phone and just ignore and trust that our children are going to learn the right things. So we have to teach our children to have dignity. And that is something that they are greatly losing when everything is just give them what they want and make them feel comfortable. There isn't dignity in not doing hard work, in not learning, and in not studying and finding truth for themselves. So, and we're not giving them truth. We're giving them loads and loads of propaganda and saying, if you even look at something else, you're wrong. So I highly recommend And I'm not a person who ever thought I would homeschool. I always thought that I wanted the high school experience for my son. I wanted prom. I wanted, the drama club, all of those things. But it is not worth it. And you have to look at, as a friend of mine has said, if we don't make sacrifices now, then we're sacrificing our kids in the future.